discussion of the CII. Last year I was, and this year I am here. So I get the motivation that I'm part of a dynamic group of people who are discussing and also acting on it. Otherwise, the progression that we are seeing in the GCCs in India wouldn't be possible. I can see the potential. I can also see how it's getting realized. So if I were to set the background, every period of economic history is remembered for the resource that determined prosperity. Every period. The 19th century rewarded nations that mastered industrial production. 20th century rewarded those who accumulated financial capital and expanded global markets. I think I wouldn't be wrong if I say 21st century is steadily being shaped by a different resource altogether, and that is organized human capability. You will see it play out in different forms, but absolutely crystallized form is the GCC. Some elements, you might find it in some parts of our economy, and some other elements in some other, but all these human capability related elements get maximized in the GCC. So today, the greatest competitive advantage lies in generating knowledge, applying technology, and solving complex problems. That's what the GCCs are. It's not as if it's the slightly upgraded version of your back of office space, the BOPs. No, this is a completely different domain. It has a lot of technology, no doubt, but the new human intervention, human skills, and the human knowledge which gets crystallized, what makes this century going to stand out in the name of GCCs. And you're all part of that immense contribution this sector is making. So this transition is altering the way we think about investments. For decades, MNCs evaluated countries primarily through the parameters such as manufacturing cost, manufacturing size, market size, logistics, and access to capital. But those considerations even now remain important. They are no longer sufficient to answer the question which remains in our mind today. Where should we build the capabilities that will determine our competitiveness in 10 or 20 years from now? If you were to ask that question, none of these factors, which were important all the while, which are important even today, but they are not the reckoning questions. So this question is a significant one because technology itself is changing at a pace unprecedented in modern economic history. AI is transforming business models almost every quarter. Scientific discovery is accelerating. Product life cycles are shrinking. Firms, therefore, seek locations where knowledge can continuously renew itself. This is critical. It cannot be static. I'm up to this, but no, I don't know beyond it. Cannot be the case. And therefore, you need to be in that part of the world where this renewal continuously keeps happening seamlessly as though. So this changing reality explains why global capability centers have assumed such strategic importance. They bring together engineering, research, data science, cybersecurity, finance, product design, and AI in ways that allow organizations to innovate continuously across geographies. And therefore, the decision of a company to establish a GCC in a given country becomes strategic investment exercise, where the investment, along with creating value for the host economy, and also continuously strengthens the enterprise's own capabilities and future competitiveness. Economists often describe confidence through market indicators. That's not new. I'm not making a new statement. Investors experience or express confidence through capital allocation. And global enterprises do so by deciding where to locate their GCCs. So that is a very important indicator as to where the location of the GCC is, and that is where global enterprises see virtue. Across these parameters, India continues to emerge as a preferred destination only because of our talent, because of our institutions, and because of our innovation ecosystem. So India, therefore, today, as was said earlier, both by Dinesh and also by Romal, probably also Gunjan, India hosts more than 2,100 GCCs, employing 23 lakh professionals directly and generating almost 100 billion in US dollars, that is, in annual revenues. More than 500 Forbes Global 2000 companies have established GCC here in India. In many sectors, an MNC is now more likely to build its next capability center in India than anywhere else. So historically, nations became prosperous by exporting commodities, manufactured goods. Today, they increasingly export ideas, research, engineering excellence, and technological capabilities. Our GCC ecosystem represents, therefore, the largest in the world organized knowledge export. So, world's largest organized knowledge export happens from India. This is why India's GCC ecosystem matters far beyond employment or exports. The competitiveness of a multinational enterprise is becoming inseparable from the capabilities it has built in India. Knowledge economies emerge when growth enhancing factors reinforce one another over very many areas or very many years as well. World-class infrastructure enables growth. Talent, research, and entrepreneurship convert ideas into innovation. Stable macroeconomic management and predictable regulation provide confidence. So together, they create an ecosystem in which global enterprises are willing to make long-term commitments. And in many ways, these are factors that are powering India's GCC ecosystem. So the discussions throughout today's summit have reflected this understanding from different perspectives on themes such as workforce transformation, applied research, AI, digital infrastructure, tier 2 and tier 3 cities, innovation ecosystems, or collaboration between government and industry, all of which was summarized by the two speakers. So India's GCC story is actually the shift from scale to strategic leadership. For nearly 3 decades, our success was measured by scale. We counted the number of centers established, the professionals employed, and the value of services that are being delivered. But every mature ecosystem eventually reaches a point where scale alone is no longer the defining measure of success. I believe India has reached that point, at least in the GCC area. The question before us is no longer, therefore, whether India can host global capability centers. We have answered that convincingly already. The real question now is whether India can become the country from which global enterprises create their most valuable capabilities, design their next generation of products, develop frontier technologies, and shape enterprise strategy itself. So the question itself is different now. The progress we can or we have witnessed over the past year reflects precisely this transition. In 2024, one of the GCC was set up in India one GCC, one new GCC was set up in India every week. Now, on an average, one new GCC gets established every day. Thank you for mentioning that earlier. India now hosts more than half of world's GCCs. Few countries in modern economic history have built an innovation ecosystem of this scale and sophistication in such a short period. Yet the GCCs being established today are fundamentally different from those established even a decade ago. Increasingly, they are being entrusted with artificial intelligence, engineering research and development, cybersecurity, digital platforms, product architecture, financial innovation, and also enterprise-wide transformation. So more than half of the new GCCs are now AI first. Engineering research development has emerged as one of the fastest growing capability areas. So Indian GCCs are assuming a growing share of global leadership mandates and strategic decision-making responsibilities. In other words, India's value proposition has evolved from cost efficiency to capability leadership. Enterprises are now moving beyond minimizing cost to maximizing innovation, accelerating discovery, and strengthening long-term competitiveness. So, and that, I believe, should define the ambition for the next decade. Not simply to host more GCCs, but to ensure that an increasing share of the world's ideas, world's patents, products, algorithms, platforms, and enterprise capabilities are conceived, engineered, and led from India. The challenge before India is therefore no longer one of catching up. It is one of the ways to stay ahead. You've reached that point where you are leading. Today, you have to continuously stay ahead, and this race is a dynamic, robust race, so you cannot presume anything. You have to keep doing better each time. So, the discussions today, as I understand, have reinforced an important lesson. Global enterprises no longer choose countries merely based on cost and incentives. It is ecosystems, not incentives alone, that determine long-term competitiveness. Recognizing that India's next phase of GCC growth requires institutional rather than incremental change, the national framework adopts a life cycle approach. So that framework, the national framework, adopts a life cycle approach from investment decisions and establishment to expansion, innovation and long-term retention. So I congratulate the CII for bringing together national and state GCC framework reports. Today, I understand more than 14 states through their officials have participated in today's deliberations. These reports provide valuable inputs for policy makers and contribute meaningfully to the ongoing dialogue between government and industry. The response from our states has been encouraging, with at least 10 states having either announced or are developing dedicated GCC policies. I'm subject to correction. Is it 14 or 10? 10 who have made the policy. In fact, when I meet the state finance ministers, the first thing I tell them is, do you have a policy? Can I send you a draft of policy? Or can I send you policies from states who have already made it? Please do something. And I would think it's just not enough if the finance minister goes about telling to states. I think more powerful voices can be through the CII. You should meet state chief ministers and the finance ministers and tell them the importance of having a policy framework for GCC, because it's going to mean so much more for the country. And if you're still talking about tier 2 and tier 3, there are states who will readily be in a position to open up their tier 2 and tier 3 cities where expansion can happen. So, because different states possess different competitive advantages, rather than replicating one another, states can develop specialized ecosystems aligned to their own capabilities and needs. Such differentiated strategies will make India's overall innovation ecosystem more resilient, diversified, and globally competitive. In September 2025, the CII recollected it. I participated in the State GCC Summit in Visakhapatnam, a fast growing tier 2 city. This locational choice is deliberate because the next phase of our GCC story cannot remain confined to a few handful metropolitan cities. If the first 2,000 GCCs were concentrated in metropolitan centers, the next wave of India's GCC growth will geographically far more be diverse. The geography of global value creation itself is changing. So tomorrow's breakthrough in artificial intelligence, engineering design, or product development could emerge readily from Chandigarh or Varanasi, Visakhapatnam, Tiruchi, or Mysore, as from Bengaluru, Hyderabad, or Gurgaon. So we should constantly think in terms of bringing those cities into the GCC fold. These cities are also offering competitive operational cost and emerging as powerful centers of innovation. So there is also a multiplier effect, which matters to me more. So I would happily say, yes, please go set it up in the tier 2 and tier 3, because it creates demand for advanced skills and specialized training. It supports startups, professional services, housing, urban infrastructure, and research collaborations. It also encourages strong partnerships between universities, industry, local institutions, helping cities evolve into vibrant innovation ecosystem. In doing so, the GCCs become catalyst for balanced regional development, but more importantly, the virtuous cycle gets kicked up. So it can move faster, the economy itself can have second order effects, which therefore spreads the development all around. So I see the GCC being great catalyst. And if their movement is far more towards tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the spread of our development will be faster and maybe even evenly spread. So this presents an important partnership opportunity for GCCs in shaping the next generation of innovation-led economic regions across India. A few minutes on government. The government recognizes that India's next phase of GCC growth requires an enabling policy ecosystem that reduces friction, improves certainty, and supports long-term investments. The Union Budget of 26-27, we have announced several measures that directly strengthen India's attractiveness as a global capability destination. Unified safe harbor regime for IT and IT-enabled services, simplifying transfer pricing compliance for GCCs, which you referred to. Enhanced safe harbor threshold from 300 crore rupees to 2,000 crore rupees, bringing many more enterprises under a simplified compliance framework. Third, fast-track advanced pricing agreement mechanism to provide greater tax certainty. Fourth, continued support for digital public infrastructure, skilling urban infrastructure, and multimodal logistics, creating stronger innovation ecosystem. Fifth, 5 university townships to deepen industry, academia, and research linkages while creating future-ready talent pools. Sixth, city economic regions to accelerate the emergence of globally competitive innovation hubs across India, enabling GCCs to expand confidently beyond traditional metropolitan centers. Seventh, Urban Challenge Fund, which was budget of 25-26, supporting cities in improving economic competitiveness and preparing them for next generation of investments. So together, these measures reduce compliance burden, improve policy predictability, and allow enterprises to devote greater attention for innovation, research, and value creation. So I would think as India's GCC ecosystem evolves, the government will continue working closely with the industry to identify emerging challenges, refine our policy framework, and ensure that India remains the world's most competitive destination for global capability centers. So from capability to global leadership is what I think defines India's next decade. The opportunity before India is to redefine our place in the global economy. Around 2/3 of Fortune 2000 companies have yet to establish a global capability center in India. So if you're talking about the numbers who have already come, I want to talk about the numbers of Fortune Global 2000 companies which have not yet set up a global capability center in India. This is one of the largest untapped investment opportunity before us. The ambition of building an ecosystem capable of supporting around 5,000 GCCs by 2030 is therefore both realistic and achievable because we have a target. You know that globe, that universe has not established yet in India. So we have that untapped pool which will be able to help us in meeting our target for 2030. 5,000 GCCs by 2030, but 2,000 companies which have yet to set up in India. And this is a milestone on much larger journey. The next phase of this growth presents significant opportunities in newer geographies, including East, West Asia, Eastern Europe, Nordic countries, and Australasia. These markets are looking for trusted partners capable of supporting advanced innovation. In my interactions with investors and business leaders from across the world, and recently, only a couple of days ago, in France, I increasingly find that many of them are either operating GCCs in India or actively exploring opportunities to establish one. I'll give you the one name, not to say that's the only name, but one name which I can readily quote because that was one of the last meetings I had. Air Liquide GCC is being set up in Pune. This is a very critical, this company is in a critical sector. They produce some of the rare industrial gases, which are today the big thing for semiconductors and others. And this company from France, which is a leader in the business of rare industrial gases, is setting up their GCC in Pune. So the world is looking at India when you're talking of capability centers. Their experiences reinforce the confidence that our talent base, innovation capabilities, and policy environment continue to make India an attractive long-term partner. So I would encourage all of you to remain active partners in this dialogue. This feedback mechanism helps us identify emerging challenges and refine policy so that India remains an attractive destination for long-term investments. So it's not just a blank, blunt talk. I'm sure CII knows that they talk and we act. So this dialogue has to keep going on. So I would also encourage greater engagement with state governments and city administrations. So as GCC expand into newer locations, such partnerships can help shape infrastructure, skills, and also institutional support in line with industry requirements. The engagements will help policymakers appreciate the importance of GCC. So in fact, the national and state frameworks developed by CII also provide valuable inputs for collaborative policy making. This is a wonderful case or an exemplar as to how industry directly has a role in policy making. This 1 year's example of CII on GCC would stand up every test of such partnership with the government. At the same time, I would like to place before the industry a few expectations for the next phase of this journey. I'm doing the talking now. I hope CII is hearing me. Continue moving decisively up the value chain. Create intellectual property, lead frontier research, develop AI applications, own product architecture, and drive global innovation. Second, deepen your engagement with India's knowledge institutions. Stronger partnership with universities, startups, and centers of excellence ensure that innovation moves seamlessly from laboratories to markets. Third, expand confidently into our emerging cities. So the tier 2 and tier 3 example, we are rapidly talking about rapid development, the talent infrastructure and innovation capacities required for global competitive enterprises are there. They are moving towards these few concentrated metropolitan towns. You don't need them to move. You go there, you get it all as the first person who steps in there. So I think that's very important. And in many emerging cities, the transformative economic impact that GCCs can have is still not widely understood. And I think CII has an important role to play in that area. I encourage industry to engage proactively with state governments, city administrations, educational institutions, and local communities to build that awareness and help prepare these cities for the next wave of GCC investments. The fourth, I would encourage every enterprise represented here to become an ambassador for India's capabilities. Enterprises that have invested successfully in India are our most credible ambassadors. Their success stories remain the strongest endorsement of India's GCC ecosystem. Fifth, strengthen partnerships with governments. Continue sharing practical feedback on policy, processes, talent, and infrastructure so that together we can build an even stronger GCC ecosystem for the future. So India's GCC journey is much larger than the story of one successful sector. It is about making India indispensable to the world's knowledge economy and strengthening our long-term economic resilience. In doing so, we will again stand to only gain. So we will gain a new form of economic resilience and strategic relevance. India possesses every ingredient required to lead this transformation. Our aspiration is not merely to host the world's capability center or centers, but to shape the next generation technologies and products and enterprises of the future. So this is how India moves from capability to leadership as I see it. And that's why I'm presenting it to you. You should understand that scale alone is not the matter. You're going to be the strategic leaders. So this is how India moves from capability to leadership. It also is an important step towards building a Vikasit Bharat that is prosperous, innovative, resilient, and respected across the world. So thank you, CII, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Madam.